Welcome back to Worship Musician Training, Part 7 in this series on the stuff you should know as a worship musician. This part is all about, the title of it is Know the Song, Not the Track, which is a little bit fuzzy and a little bit weird, and hopefully I'll be able to explain it in a nice, clear, simple way. There is this kind of, there's this occurrence that happens every once in a while where a big famous musician will be sued by some other musician. There are lots of famous examples of this. Sued because they plagiarized that person's music. And it's been a lot of talking and trying to pinpoint exactly how do you tell when somebody is plagiarizing somebody else's music. It's pretty complicated and there's a lot to it. So we'll try and keep it a lot more simple than that. We're not going to go there. The first thing to decide in a worship context is what is or is not the song. The best way to do this is to seek out multiple versions of the same song, and it can be any three different versions. They're always going to be different, especially if it's this version by this church, this version by this church, this version by this church. All those three different churches playing the same song, they're all going to do it differently. So listen to the similarities. The similarities are going to tell you what the song is, in my mind. And again, this is a very, very vague and not legal advice at all. Do not sue me. I'm just telling you what I think. What is the song is going to be the similarities that you hear between those versions. What is not the song is going to be the differences, vaguely, that you hear between those different versions. And the more wildly different the versions are, the clearer those similarities and differences are going to be. So, don't cherry pick two different versions of the same song. Maybe it's a Hillsong song, and two of the three versions that you look up are by Hillsong, and the third version is the version that you did, and you're copying the version that Hillsong did. One of the versions of Hillsong. That's not a very good spread. You need to get a little bit more variation to get more clarity with this. So what is the song in terms of the similarities? What are those similarities going to be? You're going to notice. Let's take an example. Three different versions. An acoustic version, and that's just an acoustic guitar and a singer. And then there's a full band version, and that is an acoustic guitar, but also 3 electric guitars, and a piano, and 2 synthesizers, and 2 drummers, and 5 vocalists. There's a crazy big full band. It's a very big band, but you've got all of the elements there and plenty of them. The third version. Maybe an electronic version with a drum machine and a synthesizer and a singer or two. What are the similarities that you are going to find across those 3 versions that are all playing the same song? You're going to notice that the lyrics are the same. You're going to notice that the melody is the same within 95, 99%. The melody is the same, the lyrics are the same. And the chord progression also is going to be the same. Of course, the chord progression can have slight variations. The melody can have slight variations, which allows the chord progression to have those slight variations. The chord progression is a little bit limited. It's very limited in how varied it can be between different versions. So context. This is where there's the similarities. That's what the song is. It's a singer singing the same lyrics and the same melody under the same chord progression with more or less the same rhythm also because of time signatures and things like that. The context, this is what is not the song. This is the rest of the stuff that is surrounding. This is the superfluous number of instruments that you have on band. Is superfluous the right word? I hope so. Uh, you know, the the acoustic version is obviously going to sound different. It's a different context than the full band version, which is also a different context than the electronic version. Um, there are huge contextual differences between those three versions. So now, Amazing Grace. Here is an example which I personally really dislike. This is a huge, massive, long-running cliche in contemporary praise and worship music for a very, very long time, and it annoys me a lot if you couldn't tell. Um, this cliche is, when you have a song that you're just listening to the worship band playing on Sunday, and you got your eyes closed, you got your hands up, and you're worshiping, you're praying, and you're singing along, um, and then suddenly out of nowhere, Amazing Grace comes in like a wrecking ball, like a freight train. Immediately you recognize it because it's the same melody as the original Amazing Grace, because it's probably the same melody fitting in. It's just the pentatonic, which is why it's so easy to transfer it between songs like that, to transplant it. And it's the same rhythm, it's the same lyrics, it's the same melody, and it's all this stuff. And that is immediately recognizable as Amazing Grace because it's so famous. And you know it when you hear it. Okay, anyway, enough about that. I need to move on. The rest of that context stuff. Now we're going to talk about that a little bit more. What is context, and how do you prepare yourself for next Sunday with context in mind, with your context in mind? You have to know in advance what instruments are going to be on stage, what you're playing, what they're playing, and you have to know a little bit about how you're going to fit together, how you're going to create your own version of whatever songs you're doing. And the way to do that is through understanding instrument function. Instrument function is, well, all of these things are happening on stage, no matter who you have on stage, for the most part. But these different functions can be accomplished by different instruments. Many of them can be covered by a single instrument, some of them only one, depending on what the instrument is and what the function is. So let's start with our leading functions. There's the vocal leader, who is presenting the song. There is the lead instrument, who is playing the chords of that song. There we go. What else can you have? Let's go right here in green, rhythm and bass. The rhythm is the time signature and how you want to divide that time signature up, emphasize different beats to give a different groove, to present a different emotion or energy of the certain song that you're doing. That's one of the big differences about our three versions earlier, that example, how you present your rhythm and the instrument that you use to present the rhythm, to convey the rhythm, is going to give you different energy. Rhythm and bass are together here. Bass is, well, it's bass frequencies. It's the low notes, it's the root notes, and that is also supporting the chords that the lead instrument is playing. In red we have harmony and texture, and these two are also separate from these other categories. Harmony and texture, that's like the high end, like the bass and rhythm. That's a lot of low end stuff. That's the bass drum, that's the bass guitar, that's the synthesizer, that's low end stuff. And harmony and texture, this is high end stuff. This is, well, as texture might imply, it is things that are kind of in the background, and they're just like little shimmers, little sound effects. Maybe a track is playing in the background, and it's got some little sample that's just going every once in a while at the start of the chorus. It plays this little sample. And it provides a texture. It provides a signal that here comes the chorus or something like that. It's high-end information. It's above what's happening in the leader, the leadership functions, and it's above especially what's happening in the bass functions. This is up there. This is it's like a halo over the top of the sound of the band. So there's the harmony, which is a little bit of the chords. It is the chords, but there's different ways that you can enhance the harmony or extend the harmony of these basic 1, 4, 5, 6 chord progressions. You could add sus chords, add chords, extensions, harmonic extensions, chord substitutions. There's 1,000 different things that you can do to enhance the harmony of the song. And texture, yeah, it's that kind of thing going on. So context. Let's think about that acoustic version of that song. This acoustic version of the song that you're listening to, it's one of the 3 versions of the same song. It's an acoustic guitar. I think I said it's an acoustic guitar, and that's it. And it's a guy singing. So obviously, the singing function is being fulfilled, the lead singer. The lead instrument function is being fulfilled by the acoustic guitar. The rhythm function is being fulfilled by the acoustic guitar. The bass function, there's not a whole lot of bass in an acoustic guitar, or maybe in the male voice is fulfilling that function a little bit. Maybe singing in a really low key. And he's singing some really low notes. So maybe there's some bass function in the vocal, but probably not a lot in the acoustic guitar. There's harmony. The harmony function is being fulfilled, also just because it's the lead instrument. And on the acoustic guitar, it's really easy to add sus chords and add chords and make an add 9 or a minor 7 or something like that. It's really easy to enhance the harmony in that way with an acoustic guitar. So he's probably doing that too. Texture. This gets into the production, the post-production of that track a little bit. Maybe there's a reverb on the vocal, and maybe that reverb has a high-pass shelf on it at 1,000 hertz. So it's only the really, really high, from the mid-range up, it's higher end information that is being reverberated, which is adding this kind of background field kind of sensation when you listen to it on a nice pair of speakers or headphones or whatever. The same could be happening on the acoustic guitar. Maybe there's a delay, maybe there's a chorus, maybe there's some sort of effect that's been added in post-production that adds in that texture. The full band. Let's go to the full band example from before. I can't remember how many people I had. Like 5 singers and 3 guitarists and 12 synthesizer players. So there's a lot of people on the stage. So obviously the lead vocal is being covered by the lead singer. There's a lead instrument, and you have to decide who that's going to be. It's either going to be most prominently the acoustic guitar or a piano. Let's say it's the piano in this case. So that lead instrument, maybe there's a hook, there's this little intro melody that just the piano plays, and they're taking care of that. So they're the lead instrument. They are the focus that everybody else is building around. Now rhythm, we've got 2 drummers, I think I said. So we've got a drummer maybe on a drum set and a percussionist maybe playing a sample pad, or he's playing cowbell or something like that. And cymbals, and he's just a percussionist. So there's the rhythm stuff. You can get pretty elaborate rhythmically with 2 percussionists playing at the same time. The bass, you've got a bass guitar, covered, cool. Harmony, you've got like 30 singers on stage in this full band, so harmony's covered. We don't have to worry about that. as far as enhancing the harmony, when you get more people on stage, it's a lot harder to do that. Um, the acoustic guitar could still be playing sus chords and stuff like that. So that's happening as well. And texture. We've got 1,000 synthesizer players on stage. We've got 50,000 guitar players, electric guitar players, and they're all playing at the same time. That's going to sound really good. I'm joking. We've got an excessive amount of musicians on stage is what I'm saying. Those guitar players are playing textures. They're playing, they've got lots of reverb and delay and effects and different sounds that they're all using, and they're all panned in the stereo fields in different ways. They're all equalized and compressed in different ways in the production of the track. So you have lots of different options for adding texture in the background with all those electric guitar players and synthesizer players. Now, here's an instance where we have a lot of people on stage, and a lot of these instruments are fulfilling a lot of these functions naturally. Think about the piano player who's leading. That piano player could also be doing a lot of harmonic embellishment. They could also have some textural elements to the sound. They can also cover the bass frequencies fully with their left hand. They can also fulfill an extremely elaborate and precise rhythmic function. Just the piano on its own is covering everything. But we've also got all those synthesizers and drummers and guitar players and bass players and singers who are doing all of that stuff. So the piano, for maybe this is a little bit rude, but the piano needs to stay in his own lane, and he needs to fulfill only what he needs to get the lead function. He needs to play that intro melody, and that comes back in between the verses, and he plays the chords over the verses, and maybe has a thing that he does in the chorus as well. So he needs to avoid excessive rhythm. He needs to avoid playing excessively low with his left hand. He needs to avoid adding excessive harmony and being too elaborate in that way. And he needs to avoid the sound, well, the mixing engineer needs to avoid the sound becoming too textured. The bass guitar. The bass is usually considered part of the rhythm section. He's playing the low notes, and that's all he needs to worry about. He needs to just play the root note, and don't overcomplicate your rhythm, because you've got a drummer and a percussion player who are already doing the complicated rhythm stuff. You need to stay out of that way, right? Just play the root notes. Drummers, just do what you do. You play your rhythms. You play with your sounds, and there's textural elements to the drums as well. You do that, and everybody else has to kind of stay out of their way a little bit. The harmony, we have a million vocalists on stage, and they're probably not all going to be mixed at the same volume. So there's if you can tell, there's a little bit of mixing that's happening here as well. But they can't all sing the same thing, and they can't all be in perfect rhythm with each other. In a perfect world, it can be, but it's really hard to do that. So you have to be really careful as a vocalist harmonizing. You have to be careful about your rhythm, and you have to be careful about the harmony that you pick. Maybe you pick a note that's a little bit too, it's cool, and it would probably work for a much smaller band in a much different context. But maybe that note clashes, and you're the only one that's singing it, and it kind of sticks out a little bit. You have to be careful about what you are doing, and you definitely don't want to sing over the lead vocalists. But that's a little bit more of the mixer's problem, and not the singers. You just be conscious of what you're doing. The textures, you can't have too much texture. We have lots of guitarists and synthesizers on stage. There's plenty of the sound engineer to choose from of what texture he wants at what part of the song and which one he wants to pull and the parts that these people are playing too. It makes a huge difference. If you're focusing on if you're an electric guitar and you're supposed to be fulfilling this texture function and you're playing cowboy chords like an acoustic guitar player would, um, it's not really going to work very well. You're going to create too much confusion in this area where the leaders are supposed to be indwelling. You need to stay up out of the way. You need to stay high. You need to stay textured. And you have to be conscious of the rhythm that you're playing and not playing too low and not playing any notes that are a little bit too controversial. So this is what you have to think about when you're thinking about the context of of your of your context, whatever it is. Think about what instruments are you playing, what instruments do you have, who is playing them, what are their capabilities that could feed into it also a little bit. What are you going to do in that context to fulfill these functions? You don't have to have all of them, although most of them are probably going to be filled in some way by one of the instruments. If you have a lot of instruments, you have to reduce what you do to stay in your own lane, to stay out of other people's way, and not try and do too much. If you're, I've given plenty of examples about that. You need to do only what you need to do and no more.